to say that to me all the time. And I'm like, it's stuck with me.
Get the wheels in the what?
In the well.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking off.
Like retract your gear?
Yeah. We're pulling the landing gear up. We're out of here. You know, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. It's stuck with me forever. All right. Well, welcome everybody out there to the Rusty Anchor Journey podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kane Johnson, and I've got Danny Nichols next to me. We're the co-hosts of this podcast and this journey that we're about to take you on. Today we've got a very special guest. It means a lot to us for many different reasons and different ways. Kegan Gill's here with us today. We're really looking forward to diving into his story and a little bit about his life. And we hope you guys buckle up and enjoy this ride. But before we get started, those of you who are not watching on YouTube or anything like that, in this studio, we've got a big old collage of things. Some of it's personal stuff to us. Some of it's just random things. It all has some meaning of some sort. So we're just going to try this because one of the purposes is to recognize things and be present and see things. But I'm just curious, Kegan, since this is your only second time maybe in the studio, what when you look at that wall, what catches your eye first? What's the thing that sticks out in your mind?
I mean, I got to say it's this strapping fireman over here with this epic mustache. Definitely stands out.
Oh my gosh.
Was that a training or was that actually?
That was actually on an incident. For those of you listening, he is pointing to me, and I didn't think he was going to do that. I thought we were just joking at the beginning of this we talked about, but yeah, no, that was on an incident in town here in Huntington. I actually came late. It was a fire in the industrial area, and I was a paramedic at the time, and I was coming back from the hospital. It's the most stressful. Anybody who's a firefighter out there, that's the most stressful thing when you hear the long tone go off, and it's a working fire, and you're coming back from dropping off a patient at the hospital. You're like, are you serious right now? I'm missing a fire right now? You're like, oh, wow. No. And so we hauled Cheeks over there, and I ran to the engine because the ambulance couldn't park very close because there's a bunch of rigs there. It was like, I think it was a 2-alarm fire, maybe 3. And I just ran the rig, put my gear on, and still got to do some work, actually, surprisingly, by the time I got there. But yeah, that was a fun little photo somebody took. I don't get many photos of me. I'm not that type of guy, so it's special to me when I get one. But thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff up there. You can look at this thing all day.
For sure. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. We got a lot to go over and some very interesting things. But, Kegan, why don't you just tell us like how we got here? Tell us about yourself, how we got here, man.
Yeah, my name's Kegan Gill. I'm a former Navy F-18 pilot, and I had a pretty wild career of not in a traditional sense of being a fighter pilot, but some unusual events that occurred in my service. I was a young F-18 pilot stationed with VFA 143, the Pukin Dogs out of Virginia Beach. I had earned my wings as a naval aviator. I had completed the training in the F-18 Super Hornet, and I was living my dream after about a year in my first fighter squadron on active duty. And we were going out that day to do some training with dogfighting, air combat maneuvering, or BFM as we typically call it, basic fighter maneuvering. And while it's training, we do it as close to the real thing as possible. While we're not hosing real missiles off at each other, firing 20 Mike rounds at each other's jets, the maneuvering of the aircraft and the decisions, and a lot of it is very much real and very dangerous. It's a high-risk activity for sure. We got through several rounds of this fighting on that flight, hit Joker fuel, meaning we had just enough fuel left for one last fight. And so we set up a little lower and faster than we typically do for these presentations. And my flight lead called fights on. He pointed his jet in at me. I pointed mine at his. And our jets came barreling in at each other like a couple medieval knights in a jousting match at nearly the speed of sound. And as our paths cross, I was already partially nose low and inverted. So I opted to just fully invert the jet and pull it down at the ocean in a split-ass maneuver. So diving the aircraft down as my flight lead went up with his jet. And then we'd come back and try to get a shot at each other from that position. And I was training something from that presentation so I could get better at it with this timing reversal. Anyways, this maneuver normally takes about 5,000 feet of vertical airspace to do. And in the military, we have this saying, it's live by the gouge, die by the gouge. Because it's so complex and difficult, we often boil things down into very simple memory items. So we can, in the heat of a moment when we have to make a split-second decision, we can pop that little information in there. However, in this case, it ended up taking a lot more altitude than that for a number of factors. As I pulled that jet nose low and pulled the stick all the way into my lap, commanding this jet to perform as hard as it could, pull as hard as it could, pulling 7.5 Gs, I could feel my body weighing 1,500 plus pounds. Just my head and my helmet alone weighing around 20 pounds, let's say, at 1 G, just sitting here on the ground. Now that's like having 150 pounds just on your head. And you're looking up, you're craning your neck, you're flying the jet, you're trying to breathe, you're squeezing your legs. So it's very physical, and you're also playing four-dimensional chess at high speed. So you're making decisions, you're operating weapon systems, radars, defensive systems, and there's a lot going on. Anyways, all this is going on. I've got the stick in my lap. I'm looking up at my flight lead, and then all of a sudden I just feel the jet settle and stop turning, which is the worst feeling you can imagine when you're pointed straight at the ocean. So it was like going around a sharp corner in a sports car and then having the steering wheel kick back halfway. Oh my God. Only instead of skidding off the road now, I'm stuck in a dive at the ocean. And the ocean's just rushing up at me. I hear my radar altimeter going off, going, altitude, altitude, letting me know I just busted through the 5,000-foot hard deck that we set there for training to give us a safety bubble. And still, the jet was not responding. I pulled the throttles to idle. I put out the speed brake in a desperate attempt to slow, but it was too little too late. And I just had this overwhelming sense of dread of this oh shit moment of I'm not going to get out of this, as I could see the white caps on the ocean below me as it's rapidly approaching. And I got this overwhelming sense of ground rush of just the ground is going to consume me and I'm going to be vaporized in 2 seconds. And at the last moment, 2 seconds from impact, in a 51 degrees nose low dive, so very steep dive angle, at 695 miles per hour, I pulled that ejection handle. And a normal ejection is incredibly violent. It will compress the spine permanently. People will lose like an inch of their stature forever. It's very common to get flail injuries of the arms, even if you're in a controlled ejection. Ideally, you want to be straight and level flight below 180 knots. Well, I was at 604 indicated knots, which is 695 miles per hour, or 0.95 indicated Mach, so 95% the speed of sound at almost sea level. And it turns out the human body is not terribly aerodynamic at that speed.
Yeah.
And, as I came out in this last-ditch effort, it was either certain death if I stayed with the aircraft or maybe live, but it didn't look good. And there's actually a chart in the aircraft NATOPS, like the manual, that shows what's survivable in an ejection based on your angle and speed and altitude. And where I ejected at wasn't anywhere on that chart. So wow. I definitely defied the limits of what you're supposed to do in ejection seat, but I had no choice. But as I impacted that airflow at nearly the speed of sound, that sound barrier force ripped my helmet off my head, smashed my head and my face, giving a traumatic brain injury. I broke my C1 in my neck, shattered both my upper arms. The humerus in my right arm tore through my right brachial artery, causing rapid internal bleeding. My left scapula shattered in my shoulder. Left forearm shattered the radius and ulna, severing the median nerve that controlled my left hand. The brachial plexus, which is the nerve that controls a lot of the upper body, was smashed as my vertebrae compressed, causing that nerve damage in my body, losing the function of my arms. It was so fast that the gear on my vest shredded off my vest. Not that I could have used it, but now my radio was gone. My signaling equipment was gone. The dry suit that I was wearing to protect me from the 37-degree Fahrenheit open ocean Atlantic that was below me had shredded apart. Now I'm fully exposed to the elements. My legs flailed so violently in that airflow. This is an impact of air instantaneously. It's 100 times the force of a Category 1 hurricane, impacting my body instantaneously. And wow. That caused my feet to flail so violently that the steel-toe boots on my feet smashed open my lower legs, causing open tib fib fractures, chunks of my tibia falling into the ocean, chumming the water for we actually were joking just before this flight that there was a 16-foot, 3,500-pound great white shark named Mary Lee, one of the largest white sharks ever tagged.
God.
We were tracking it on the Shark Tracker app right before the flight. And we were joking, today would be a terrible day to eject. There's below freezing air temps, churned up ocean swell, and cold water with 37-degree Fahrenheit at the nearby buoy. And there's a frickin' 16-foot Jaws down there as well. So all this stuff comes together, and now I'm impacting the sound barrier. My body's destroyed. By the time the ejection sequence completed, it takes about 0.4 seconds to exit the aircraft in an ejection seat, so less than a half a second. I now had 1.6 seconds before I was going to impact the ocean. And in that time, the parachute deployed and slowed me enough so I didn't die and impact with the ocean. The jet impacted the ocean and just vaporized. The largest chunks they found of this $89 million Super Hornet were about the size of a crumpled up license plate. But I was lucky to be alive. That parachute that had just saved my life then very quickly sunk underneath the ocean current and swell and started to drag me underneath the surface. And for guys like you, I know you're very familiar with that feeling when you need a breath of air in the ocean and you can't get it, how terrible that is. And now I have no ability to swim against it. And I was just at the mercy of the ocean. Fortunately, my flight lead spotted my parachute opening. He was able to coordinate a rescue effort to get me out of there, but I spent 2 hours just getting drowned alive by my parachute. My beacon had malfunctioned, so there was no way to locate me other than luckily my skipper, my flight lead, spotted my jet, my parachute, and he was able to get a fishing vessel actually over to my position. And while they weren't able to rescue me because I was so tangled in this paracord and getting pulled under the surface, but they were at least able to provide a visual reference as this rescue effort continued. Otherwise, I would have just drifted off into the ocean, a little tiny dark head that was largely under the surface and never be seen again. The parachute should have automatically disconnected from this. It's called a SeaWorms, which is a saltwater activated explosive device designed for this very reason, because upper body injuries are so common in high speed ejections. You're unable to reach up and manually disconnect these coke fittings that connect you to the parachute. So I was just at the mercy of that parachute in the ocean with whatever it wanted to do to me. And while I don't have clear linear memory, I had for years, I was dealing with flashbacks and night terrors where I was back in the ocean getting drugged beneath the surface, and that overwhelming sense of doom and dread that I'm bleeding out, I can't breathe, and there's a shark that's going to eat me at any second. But miraculously, a Navy H-60 Seahawk helicopter got on scene. They got the rescue swimmer into that icy cold ocean, dude named Cheech, cut me loose of that paracord and got me up into the helicopter. It was about a 40-minute ride to a level 1 trauma center in Norfolk, Virginia. And on that ride, they were resuscitating me repeatedly. I would come to, I'd be shouting, screaming, delusional, and in shock. And then the next moment, I would just be comatose, not moving, resuscitating me, sternum rubs, doing everything they could to get me to come back. And so those guys were doing everything they could, just panicking to get me to the hospital. And fortunately, they got me to a level 1 trauma center that had just the absolute dream team of surgeons on that day. They took my core body temp was at 87 degrees Fahrenheit when they got me there. So I should have been dead from hypothermia, but they say that icy cold ocean actually preserved my body from bleeding out. They said actually had my dry suit function properly, I would have bled to death way before anybody got there.
Wow, unreal.
And they also think that it preserved my brain function because of the head injury. They induced a coma. I had multiple blood transfusions from all the blood loss. I was being treated for a rhabdo because my kidneys were so overwhelmed from all that tissue damage that it was shutting down my internal organs. But they were able to keep me together. I spent the next week undergoing over a dozen trauma surgeries. They rebuilt my skeleton with titanium rods and steel plates, so I've got like a no-shit Wolverine skeleton now, minus the claws, cutbacks and all. Cow. They couldn't afford that. Yeah. And then about 2 weeks later, I started to come to out of that. And when I woke up, I didn't have any recollection of where I was or what had happened. Between the head injury and the drugs, I was pretty loopy. I remember trying to move, and I thought that they had tied me onto the hospital bed. And I looked down, and my arms were covered in plastic wrap, like a vacuum seal on my arms and legs, and I was covered in hundreds of staples and sutures. And they came in eventually and said, I remember trying to move and I couldn't get up because I thought they tied me down, but they're like, oh, you're paralyzed. That's why you can't move. And eventually the doc said, to give me a prognosis, was you're likely never going to walk again. You're not going to be able to use your arms again, and your flying career is over. And in that moment, I had every reason to just bite off on all this overwhelming darkness of my life's over. I just crashed an $89 million jet I'm going to be responsible for. It was a really dark hole I found myself in. Mm-hmm. But I had this little spark, which was, fuck you guys, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And it ignited me, man. And it gave me a drive to work. And I had the discipline that I had built through years of the training that I had been through. And I just started to apply myself every day towards my goal of getting back to the cockpit. I started to visualize getting back in the aircraft. What's that going to be like? And I didn't understand it at the time, but I think I was interacting on some quantum realm of that visualization and mindset of the power of the mind to overcome the impossible. Yeah. And I spent 2 years going through more surgeries, overcoming prescription drug addiction to this massive plethora of all the shit they were pumping me full of for pain management, for the nerve damage. And I was able to get a stack of medical waivers. I went through an investigation for the mishap and ended up getting the opportunity. Could I get my body back to go back and fly Super Hornets? And after 2 years of all that, I was able to max out the Navy's physical fitness test again and got invited to come back and fly Super Hornets. And this is sort of the end of the happy ending Disney version of the story. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of where the real shit really started to happen. That was much more challenging to overcome than anything that I just described. And later in my career, once I was back flying active duty, I had an issue in the aircraft where the pressurization system malfunctioned, causing type 2 decompression sickness. So little bubbles of nitrogen coming out of solution in my blood, blocking proper blood flow to my brain. And I was treated in a hyperbaric treatment facility, but I still wasn't quite right. And this, I think it was adding insult to the injury of my brain injury that was likely unresolved from a few years prior to that. And my life just completely unraveled. Insomnia, mood changes, personality changes, concentration and memory lapses. I remember sitting down on the bed right after this had happened, and the whole room just tumbled around me from vertigo, and I could not sleep. Mm-hmm. And that persistent insomnia just started to infect my life, and my life just started to unravel. When you don't sleep, you don't recover, not at all. Everything falls apart. Yep. And I went from this sort of confused and dazed state with what I described to, at first it felt like I was living in the Truman Show where I was, everyone was an actor and this was all fake, and the song would come on the radio and I thought it was like targeted at me for a specific reason or trying to influence me directly. And that started to grow, and the hypervigilance and the paranoia grew, and I started to create these delusional plots in my brain, but I couldn't no longer distinguish between my imagination and my reality. And I eventually cried uncle and went into medical, which is so hard to do when you're in the military or as a first responder, because as soon as you come forward and say you have something going on with your mental health, there goes your medical clearance, there goes your security clearance. But I knew it had gotten to the point where I could not safely operate an aircraft anymore without causing damage. But when I went in to get help, it was, before long I had a delayed onset PTSD diagnosis, and they just really bit off on the emotional side of it and the behavioral side of it. And it was almost presented like this was all just something that was in my head. Yeah. Like I'm just making this up. It up. Yeah. And I was like, it's not that simple. I'm able to compartmentalize to operate at the levels I was able to do. I was able to overcome all this physical rehabilitation and come back from the impossible. How can this just be some emotional thing? And it wasn't just simply some emotional thing. The physiology of my brain had been disrupted. The wiring of that hardware was just in chaos and inflamed and not working properly. Yeah. My fight or flight nervous system was just dialed up to 11, and I was in this constant state of panic and worry, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't shut down. And instead of actually addressing the underlying brain injury with the misunderstanding that remains to this day largely, it was all about, you just need to take these pills and come into therapy and talk about it. Yeah. And that just became more and more frustrating. This led me to becoming suicidal, thinking I was a failure, letting down everybody. Like, how can I not get over this little behavioral thing that's going on in my head? I felt like I was letting down everybody that believed in me to get me back into the jet. And the only thing that kept a pistol out of my mouth one night was my baby boy and my wife were asleep next to me, and I didn't want to wake them up. But had they not been there in that moment, I would have joined the 44 plus veterans a day offing themselves. And that treatment continued for a while. I was eventually medically retired from the military after going through what was basically the bureaucratic version of the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, as I describe it. Just a complete nightmare of paperwork and an investigation into my health, being treated like I'm lying about all this. Eventually, I was medically retired, and that same treatment continued at the VA, which was just take your pills. Yeah. And when the pills aren't working, it's because you need more. And those pills didn't do anything to heal the body. They were just masking the symptoms. Yeah. They were putting me into this drug-induced state of unconsciousness, but it wasn't restful sleep. And within a few days of having my dosage of a medication I was given for insomnia called Seroquel upped from 300 milligrams a night to 450 milligrams a night, my wife came into the house after a job interview, heard me rustling around, and she came into the bedroom, and I had shaved off my hair in chunks for some reason. I had shaved off my eyebrows. I was bare-ass naked, except I had a black plastic garbage bag tied around my neck like a cape.
Yeah, you're
because I thought I was like Batman. I was going to go fight crime in the northern Michigan snowy weather dressed like that. That got me a trip to the ER. Luckily, my wife's a trauma nurse. She's dealt with psychotic patients, and she kind of knew what to do. But I had an out-of-body experience there and then was transferred to a VA inpatient psych facility. And the treatment I experienced and witnessed there when I became lucid again was absolutely abysmal treatment that is not a healing environment. The same things that are done to a prisoner of war that you're trying to break and get them to be complicit with whatever you're trying to get them to do. These are the exact same things that are being done to American veterans and civilians in these government-run facilities. For example, every 15 minutes, they're required when you're on one-to-one care like I was in an active psychosis, they would come in with a flashlight and shine it directly in your face in the middle of the night every 15 minutes to make sure you weren't hurting yourself. It's already a very difficult place to sleep in with all the noise of other psychotic veterans screaming and yelling. Everything's hard tile floors, concrete walls. You're sharing rooms with other guys. So it's an impossible place to sleep. The food is just abysmal, garbage, ultra processed. There's not a fresh fruit or vegetable in sight. Yeah. It's food that depletes your nourishment instead of restoring your body when you eat it.
Can't rest, no sleep.
No sleep.
The worst thing for mental health.
Shitty beverages.
Anything.
You get to go outside maybe once a week into a concrete yard that's surrounded by high metal fencing, high-rise brick buildings, concrete ground. There's no sunlight, no exercise, and you're literally dressed like a prisoner. You wear prison scrubs, and the staff wears white lab coats. So there's this Stanford prison experiment dynamic,
like a movie.
And so I eventually tried to escape that facility unsuccessfully. I was injected with Haldol and had just a hellish experience with that. I was stripped of my Second Amendment right to bear arms while in that facility permanently. I was committed to that facility despite being voluntarily admitted, not having ever committed a crime. And once I got out of that facility after 40 days with the support of my family, I was such a bitter, dark, broken human being. And for a while, I could see how people get to that point where they want to go on a freaking shooting rampage. I felt I had slipped through these cracks of the veneer of our society into this dark underbelly and seen this truth that the system doesn't give a fuck about you when you fall into those cracks. And I was very fortunate to come across a network of veteran nonprofit organizations that gave me access to real healing through health optimization, nutraceutical protocols, traumatic brain injury clinics, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, psychedelic assisted therapy. And over the course of a few years of those modalities, I've gotten my life back. Anyways, that's everything in a really small nutshell. There's a lot more to the story. We can unpack it however you like, but
I swear to God, if the camera was on me the whole time, my jaw, I don't think goes that far down. My not just super like and yeah, for those of you who are listening, I mean, that story, that is a very small, like, we'll call it Cliff's Notes. That shows you my age. Cliff's Notes version of your story and what you've been through.
So
Absolutely incredible. Yeah.
the the day of the accident to now, how many years has that been?
It's been a little over 11 years now, going on 11 and a half years.
Wow.
It's been a long
That's
trip.
a process, man. That's a long journey.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this a few times, and it wasn't until getting into the book that like I started to really get to understand your story. But I don't know, I'm just kind of blown away. One, you survived, but it's like, when did you stop surviving and when did you start to thrive? Because I mean, I would
That's a great
say
question.
our conversations over the last few years, like, you know, we'll call each other from time to time, or we'll get a chance to see each other when you came out to open water in 22 and went through active mentorship and the channel crossing, you know, like we've had some incredible time together. We've had some really deep conversations, and, you know, just, if I was just hearing your story right now for the first time, I wouldn't fully understand how much you've healed and how much you're thriving. So like, when did that happen?
Yeah, there was a real pivotal moment in that, and it was thanks to an organization called Heroic Hearts Project. They got me access to ayahuasca ceremony down in Peru with the Shipibo, and after 3 nights of ceremony in the jungle, reconnecting to something much greater than myself, I came from a place of complete broken and despair and just struggling to live my next day without wanting to off myself, to being so full of love and hope and purpose. That was a really pivotal moment. So there were a couple moments like that, but it was through gaining access to indigenous medicine with indigenous people, these wisdom keepers. And these are not alternative medicines. These are the original medicine. And when I got access to that, not only did it start to heal me on the neurology of my body, it started to heal me emotionally, heal me spiritually, and it heals the brain. I mean, the physiology of my brain, these substances help create neuroregeneration. And to use Michael Pollan's analogy from his book, How to Change Your Mind, which I highly recommend for anybody curious about exploring these medicines, it's like a fresh snowfall over the ruts of negative emotion and behaviors that have become you. And once you get this fresh snowfall, you're now stuck at the top of that mountain with your skis or your snowboard, and you get to pick a fresh line to come down that hill.
Yeah.
And rebuild yourself.
Yeah. It's like a new pair of glasses.
Yeah.
You know, your
Whole new
your
perspective.
perception, all of that. It's like almost like living in a state of gratitude.
Yes.
Yeah.
It opens the gratitude that has been within you and maybe armored over for all the years of the shit we go through and all those walls we build.
Yeah.
And that just all broke away and I could feel again.
Yeah.
That's
like, those are like some of the threads that we talk about. I mean, I 100% have a different experience of falling into the pain, but, you know, going through my own survival and hitting that bottom where, you know, checking out was a very good option, and it was almost the option.
Yeah.
To getting help, you know, going into recovery, you know, changing some, just no longer drinking or doing drugs, to be completely honest. And then getting into a program that is really centered around fellowship and God and community and, you know, like living in a state of gratitude. It's amazing how, you know, one day you can be dark and everything is just, and then the next day you're like, oh, gratitude. I get to do this. It's just wild. Man, there's so much to unpack.
Yeah, I'm curious to follow up on your experience with this, because we're so, I feel, as a society, a lot of us are so into the quick fix, the treating the symptoms and that kind of thing. And I can imagine with what you're experiencing, hope's taken away and despair, and you want to get better. You want to be back to the Kegan you were, and you don't give up easily, as we've heard. You like to keep pushing through, and you're going to show them and all that stuff. For someone who hasn't had an experience like you've gone through with your recovery, what is that process like? Like, is it you have one ceremony, all of a sudden it's new, and then you're good to go, and there's like this quick fix? You know what I mean? Like, just help people understand what that's like, because there's so much to this psychedelic therapy and different things that's so out there, and a lot of people are really just don't know about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or scared of it or whatever. So yeah, for you, like, what is that process like, I guess is what I'm looking at. Like, can people honestly look at what you've gone through and go, oh, like, I can do that. Like, I can, that is something I can attain. This one pill, it makes it a quick fix. I can go through this ceremony or this couple of them or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely not a quick fix. And
Yeah,
it's not like you just go and do the ceremony and now everything's good again.
Yeah.
It gives you a window. It gives you a reset. I mean, a lot of these medicines will help reset the dopamine system. They help to reset your nervous system, so you're not in this fight or flight state all the time. And they just give you a moment to breathe and to be. And they call it the pink cloud. Like, after you go through a big medicine experience, you're kind of in this floaty, happy place for a little while. But if you don't start to integrate what you've learned from that and start to change your habit patterns and rebuild your life in a healthy way, you can very quickly find yourself right back in the same ruts that you found yourself in prior, or even those ruts deeper. I think there's a stigma against these medicines that is has been propagated by the war on drugs and throwing all of these substances into the same category as some more harmful Schedule I narcotics and things that are out there, which is a mistake. But these should still be treated with respect. And you can't just take these and all of a sudden you're magically better.
Yeah, and it's not a party.
It's not a party. It's the opposite.
Purpose.
It's really, you're doing this for a reason with purpose, and then you have to integrate that. So what was really without even using the medicines, a lot of the things that were the most important are just rebuilding your habit patterns to a healthy lifestyle, with sleep being the absolute pillar of that. Now, when done the right way, the medicines can help you get better sleep, but sleep is probably the most important thing that we do for health and recovery. There's a great book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker out there. I highly recommend it to anybody who has any doubt that sleep is absolutely required. You need 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night in order to recharge your body. And when you start to go on a deficit of that on a regular basis, it will take a toll on you in time. And you can be the guys that say, I don't need sleep, I can function without sleep. And you're right, you can for a while, but it's going to wear you down. Yeah. But that was probably the most important thing, was rebuilding a foundation of sleep, rebuilding a foundation of nutrition, healthy hydration, exercise, connection to nature, getting sunlight. Like, these are like the basic things that our grandmas and grandpas maybe told us. Yeah. But that's where these medicines are really beneficial, is they give you the opportunity to rebuild your habits, but then you have to do the groundwork and have the discipline to enact those changes. And you don't have to be perfect, and it doesn't all have to be at once. Like, you don't have to go from, charging it hard and partying at the club every night and drinking a fifth of vodka or whatever whatever your vice is before the ceremony, and then afterwards now you got to live like a monk. No. But you can take steps in a positive direction, make positive changes over time. And maybe, as you start to change your priorities and your values and what you care about, some of those toxic things that were part of your life will start to fade away. So maybe some of these friendships that you had were based on drinking and going out to the bars, those will fade with time, which can be challenging too. Having these people that you're close to and friends that now you realize you got to put your priorities first with your health, and going out to the bars and hang out with your buddies, that might not be part of who you are anymore. So there's some really difficult changes but it's going to take discipline and time. And it's all about that integration piece and rebuilding yourself afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah. And one last follow up. I know Danny's got some really good questions he wants to ask, and I just want to stay here for a second just to help people understand, probably more from my own genuine curiosity too, because I'm really fascinated by this stuff. Is so now, what does that look like? So you go through the ceremony. Do you do these on a regular basis? Do you take these medicines or go to these ceremonies on a regular basis, or as needed? You get to a point and there's a trigger point for you, like, oh, I need to go back, or how does that work?
Yeah, some people will do just one big ceremony and then they're good. They've reset their system. They have no calling back to it. And then they start to integrate these things in a healthy way and never touch this stuff again. For me, I took several ceremonies with a variety of different medicines over the course of several years, but I was only doing these things maybe once every 6 months or so. But at this point, I'm in a really good place without any of that. And at the moment, I don't have any calling to do any sort of medicine ceremony. I've been able to rebuild, and I'm not saying maybe someday I will want to go back into that and explore it again and get that reset and grow spiritually in connection with what you get to access in that realm. But it's not about the psychedelic experience. I think there's a lot of people that can be chasing that experience, but that's really not what it's about. It's not about being in this altered state of mind.
Yeah.
It's about bringing those lessons back into your life and then being here in the present and being the best authentic version of yourself that you've ever been, and sharing that with those that you interact with. So I'm at a place now where I've really built a healthy lifestyle with all the things that we talked about. A meditation practice has been profoundly impactful on me in maintaining a way to get into that state where you go with the psychedelics without any medicine in my system at all. This is what the monks and these Tibetans practice. They're able to get to those same states of consciousness without any medicine, just through a meditation practice. And it's almost unbelievable to me, but now that I've experienced it, that's accessible through meditation in any moment once you start to practice. And so that's my ritual now, that's part of my day. When I wake up and when I go to bed, I like to bring in meditation at least once, if not twice a day. And that puts me back in that state of gratitude and love and peace and openness that is at the core of all of our beings. That is who we really are when we strip away the obscurations of the ego. And we live in a society that is obsessed with the self and who we are. And I'm this guy. This is me. I'm a fighter pilot. I've got this rank. I've got this vehicle. I got this house. This is my hot girlfriend. All these things that we build up of this is who I am. And it's all bullshit. And when you melt all that away and you allow the ego to just get the fuck out of the way,
there you go.
We've got this just beautiful, pure source of love. Some people call that Christ consciousness. Some people call it the oneness. There's so many different names and explanations, and they're all imperfect and don't even grasp what the truth really is, but
it's all pointing towards that same truth.
Thank you for calling it just bullshit. Let's just call it what it is. It so is. There's so much to it, man, and it's crazy. 100%.
Yeah, I remember. So I don't know. I know you're not supposed to blow anonymity with sobriety and stuff, but on a similar thread but different modalities, of course, going through the process of getting sober really leads you down a spiritual path. And, you've got a fellowship and you've got a book, and that book really kind of gives you some basic principles and guidelines to follow. And it's really, one man talking to another man, sharing experience, strength, and hope. And I remember, maybe a year and a half into this journey, I was kind of plateauing spiritually. The pink fluffy cloud, as you will, just kind of popped, and here I am, and this is me for the rest of my life, and what am I going to do? And it was suggested that I just kind of go down this spiritual route, and I start diving into different religions, maybe just start checking things out. And I went and studied Hinduism for a little bit, and then I got to a point where I just couldn't get down with all the different gods and deities. It was just kind of a thing. And then Buddhism, And then I think I kind of got to a place where I'm like, well, I'm not ready to give up nicotine or meat, you know. And then I got turned on to Self-Realization Fellowship, which is really just the science behind meditation. You know, it's got a blend of Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism, and but it was really about the science of meditation. And I was getting into it. You know, it was 45 minutes at 4:30 in the morning, and it was 45 minutes before bed. And I was starting to have these experiences where I was really connected to the universe. It was almost like I could ask a question, I would see it on a sign or a person, or I'd hear something, and it was like it was really opening my mind up to like, well, we are connected here on a deeper level. And one morning when I was sitting in meditation, this voice, just as loud as it could, just said, "Wake up, wake up. You've got too much to offer society. You can come back in the fourth quarter. Get up and get moving." And that really launched me down this path of getting into nonprofit work, you know, and that's how we met. You know, got an opportunity to teach surfing, got an opportunity to meet you, and then it continued, you know, with open water. And you know, for Kyle and I, both being at a place of being burnt out, you know, we just knew, well, if you guys don't know, I'm talking about Kyle, is our co-founder of Open Water, but we adventure, exercise, and fellowship. Those were like the key ingredients to combat the stress over stimulation and trauma. And, you know, paddling that channel that first year was like a bond that like you'll always have that bond with those people that you do those things with, you know. But I'm curious because, like, you know, you go through the experience, you hit the modalities, you get this new lease on life, you have this new perception, and now you have this willingness. What's Kegan Gill up to now, and what is the mission going forward?
Yeah,
like the
that's a great
advocacy,
question.
or like what has this new lease on life done for you and your family and your mission going forward?
I mean, by being present and authentic and true to yourself, it's had a drastic impact in a positive way on every aspect of my life. And what I really got through those ceremonial experiences was put back in touch with a sense of purpose was a big thing. And my sense of purpose was to share this, to share what I've been through in a way that can help others, to be of service again. And, you know, I went into the military in part because I wanted to be of service and do something. This isn't what I ever imagined would be my way of being in service, but now I am sharing my story through writing a book, through motivational speaking, podcasting, and then I coach people. I help people that are going through their struggles to rebuild in a way that's positive. I'm kind of a unique individual in that, you know, I've got this sort of like high speed part of my life where I was, you know, a fighter pilot, but then also I've been through these spiritual experiences. And because of that, I'm able to relate to individuals who are oftentimes likely repulsed from the mention of the word meditation or healing and things like that. And so I've really found a cool little niche area of helping people who typically would be not attracted to taking this route of self-improvement and spirituality and things. And that's really where I found a lot of purpose. And most importantly is just being present with my family, with my kids, with my wife, with my friends, with you guys, and just being in the moment. And you know, I'm past the point in my life where I have to like accomplish stuff and like put the flag up and say, I did this, I'm this, I don't have anybody to prove anything to. And I never did, but for so long, as so many of us do, like we feel like we gotta do all this stuff and have all these labels and all these, you know, things on our chest to be somebody. You just don't. It's all nonsense. And it's a huge relief to just be.
Yeah.
And when you're just being present and open, everything starts to glow around you, and it's contagious. I see it in my kids. I see it in my relationship with my wife that we had to rebuild over the course of years. And we're certain, I mean, it's still a work in progress, but it's like
It
all
always
these
will be.
things. Yeah. Always
Oh,
will
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That. I was just going to say, I have a question written down, and because we're kind of on this thread right now. If you had one truth you could offer to military personnel, first responders, or anyone stuck in their own wreckage, what would that be?
I think that people in those types of careers, it's really easy to get it in your mind that because you're having some sort of struggle with your mental health internally, that there's something wrong with you, that this is your weakness. And it's not true whatsoever. We are all human. We all have very delicate brains with the consistency of soft butter, and that neurology takes a toll. Whether you're a firefighter, first responder of any sort, military, or a soccer mom, like we all go through stressors in our lives that take a toll on the physiology of our brain. But the good news is there's ways to heal and repair that. And you hold the keys to that, but it's not going to be an easy fix. You can heal yourself without even needing the TBI clinics and the nutraceuticals and the psychedelics. While those things are accelerators and can benefit people, especially with more severe brain injury and damage, you don't need any of that. What you need to do is start to change your habit patterns and stop poisoning yourself, getting sleep, prioritizing yourself, which is really difficult when you're still active duty or a first responder to create that space to do these things. But that's the way to healing. And now I'm working with an organization called the Davis Hope Project, or the Davis Focus Project. And what we're trying to do is to help break that stigma of seeking help. And what we're doing is reframing it as health optimization. We're trying to optimize your health. You want to be the best version of yourself. Instead of labeling you as like, oh, you've got this mental health condition or you've got this brain problem. No, let's just get you to be the best version of yourself. And so what they're doing is right now it's focused on veterans, getting them access to state-of-the-art diagnostics so we can, one, just actually see what the problem is. So most of the mental health system I went through in the conventional world, there was no blood testing. There was nothing done to actually look and see what was damaged. It was all, how do you feel today? What are your emotions? And it's like, maybe those are the results of something that's going on, but you're not actually getting to the root of the problem. It's like going to the car dealership because your car's making a terrible noise and vibrating. And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to plug in to get a diagnostic. We're just going to install subwoofers and just put in DMX and when you're driving, turn it up and you won't hear it. And the problem's still there. Oh, we're going to deactivate the check engine light for you too. So no, there's no problem. That's conventional medicine. But anyways, so they do a really good diagnostics with all these state-of-the-art diagnostics tools, and they actually see where your physiology is disrupted. And then they provide you a customized treatment protocol using a network of incredible healing modalities to give you access to what you need to heal yourself. And the goal is to get this to be something that's integrated with the VA healthcare system. There's interest at the VA to work with this program and maybe start helping to send guys through this kind of program. And the goal is to get this to where active duty guys, so guys that are active law enforcement, first responder, military, can get this while they are active duty and optimizing guys' health. The SEAL community did a really good job when they started to see guys dropping like flies from operator syndrome or the combination of TBI and PTSD, which I think are interlinked. I think PTSD is really just the symptoms of dysfunctional brain physiology. And the SEAL community recognized that. And so what they started to do was get their guys early diagnostics and then health optimization so that they could perform and be at their best. Yeah. The military is putting so much money into the training of guys like that, or the F-18 pilots and pilots in general. Like, you're investing into that. Let's invest in people's health in advance so they can be the best version of themselves for their families, for their squadron, so that they're operating at the highest levels. It's going to reduce mishaps. It's going to cause a better functioning organization. It's going to cause better longevity with your service members. Right now, the military is hemorrhaging experience rapidly because they're just burning people out. And it's this self-perpetuating problem of burning people out. And now there's not enough people to fill those shoes, and it's getting thinner and thinner. And the lifestyle is getting harder and harder and burning more people out. So we can keep these people healthy preventatively, proactively, so that they're not getting to the point where they have to be medically retired and then put on disability and receive those benefits and then go down that whole pipeline of just disaster and tearing their lives apart and destroying their families.
Yeah.
And
that preventative part.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine named Jason Cash from Long Beach Fire, and he was on a podcast, and he was talking about, and I totally agree with him, which is like treating anybody that's in the service profession that's out there serving the community as a profession, you know, in the capacity that we do as first responders or in the military and whatnot, as professional athletes. We're low-paid professional athletes.
Oh,
and we're asked in some cases to do this for a long period of time, right? If you're in the military, you do a full career, 20 plus years,
right.
You know, you're aging as you go through that. And same thing in the fire service, law enforcement. And you're asked to perform the same duties with the same weight of equipment, the same level of performance at 50 years old as you were when you were 25 when you got hired. And in that, there's no real support other than physicals and make sure you're okay. Can you do this? Can you do that? And there really isn't that support. I think there's a desire to do that. There's just they don't know how, or maybe there isn't a value because they don't see that concept yet. And just like you were talking about with the SEALs, you know, like, yeah, you put all this money and time and the experience that these people have, you know, and you're just going to waste that away because you don't want to put the extra effort into giving what they do. You see what professional athletes go through, you know, they're injured. You look at Aaron Rodgers, freaking ruptures the Achilles at 40 years old, and he's walking around like a couple months later, he's back in the game, you know, doing, you know, working out as a quarterback, kicking ass.
Oh yeah.
Well, he didn't have a great season, but still able to perform at that level far beyond all of us because he had the best treatment. He's a high valued person. They're spending lots of money and lots of exposure on him, right? Why don't they treat us like that, right?
Yeah, and this sort of proactive health optimization route of it also solves the problem that the military is facing, which is they don't want to turn the rock over. That's admitting that the pilots are suffering TBI from the nature of that job. Because if they do that, now you're going to have a bunch of med down pilots in their eyes. But this kind of helps solve that. Like, let's optimize their health proactively, get them health. They don't have to get a label on them. They don't have to say, I've got a mental health issue, I've got a brain injury. Let's just fix the problem ahead of time.
And they want to keep doing what they're doing.
Right.
They want to. It's not like they're like, looking, I got to get out of it. You know, if you're a fighter pilot, you want to be a fighter pilot. I'm sure. You're just like, I don't want to do it like this. Yeah. I don't want to do it the way I feel.
I don't want to be burned out and run down and
so
feeling shitty all the time and sleep deprived. It's like.
That's a really interesting thread. You know, you talked about dysregulation, you know, and at Open Water, we've been focusing a lot on, you know, dysregulated physiology, nervous system, you know, leads you down the road to disconnection and burnout and, you know, what happens after that. And so just looking at that backwards, you know, wanting to get connected to a fellowship, right? And then through the movement and the core values and the behavior changing, it gets you back to connected to something that's really, really important. It might be bigger than yourself. And then, you know, you have your purpose.
Yeah.
And it's just rewinding that, you know, and I've always looked at Open Water as like a solution. You know, water's the medium that brings us together, and it's a fellowship.
It's a healer, man. Nature's the healer.
Yeah, right. And you know, that's just our flag that we're putting in the ground. You know, bringing people together, not letting people get to the burnout place because you know, serving first responders who are still active, especially firefighters, it is the sleep. You know, it's the sleep and it's the stigma, right? Like, you don't have a problem. You just have a dysregulation of a nervous system or a physiology because of the work that you do. You know, let's give you the resources and the tools to get regulated and get connected so you can get back out there and continue to do the job. Because when somebody calls 911, talk about professional athletes, you know, you want those people to show up the best version of themselves to save the day.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's a really interesting one because, you know, we've had 20 years of conflict overseas and a veteran community that has gone through the stigma of not talking about it to now, like yourself, being able to come out and talk about it. Like, hey, it's okay to say you're not all right. You know, like ask for help, mentorship, professional help, whatever it is. Like, get the resources and the tools, right? But then you're the biggest thing that you've been talking about, which is this undercurrent of willingness. You better have the willingness to do the work, or you're going to end up white knuckling it from one thing to the next because you're going to be relying on those things to be the solution when really it's inside you.
Oh yeah.
You got to have the willingness.
You got to be the captain of your own ship.
Yeah, but you can't do it alone.
No.
You know, like we can do together what one can't do alone, you know? Like how many times have we called each other and talked through like some dark times?
Yeah.
Because like you get it, you know, or I get it, or you get it. And sometimes your buddy's going to say the thing that's like, that's what I needed to hear, you know, and that willingness inside of you gets you moving.
Yeah, and it's natural when you get into that state where your freaking amygdala or whatever it is in your brain that gets dialed up super high, where you're just nonstop panic mode and burned out, and you naturally want to crawl into a hole and be alone and disconnect.
Yeah.
And for me, that was totally, I was disconnecting from everybody around me, my friends, my family, everything. I just wanted to be alone all the time. And so recognizing that is going to continue down that dark path. And then organizations like Open Water, bringing people out and reconnecting and rebuilding that camaraderie that they had in the service of whatever they did, be it the military or first responders, and getting that back together is so valuable. And that's been what's so powerful about some of these indigenous medicines, is it reconnects you to something greater than yourself. Because when we are alone, we will suffer and atrophy and wither away. We need to connect to be alive.
Yeah. We've been touching on Open Water a little bit, and you know, it's near and dear to my heart too. We all met each other through.
We've all suffered in the channel.
We've all suffered, and that's where I kind of want to get to, right? And we've all met each other through the water, right? You know, teaching, you know, you teaching him how to surf, right? Me trying to make sure he doesn't drown. That was my role during that time.
Oh, that's right.
You know,
that's right.
I was the merman of flippers, grabbing people and picking them off the board.
We were trying to figure out, was that 2017 or 2018? We couldn't remember.
I think it was 18.
Yeah,
pretty sure. And
it's probably
one
18.
quick story that I'll share, but before I ask this question was, I don't know, it's in my head, and it was just fascinating to me. Is you know, we're out there with these veterans, and you know, a lot of them, it's obvious that they're part of the program, right? Because they're missing a limb, or they've got a little hitch in their giddy up, or there's something going on, right? And you're just out there and you're, you know, doing it. And I remember coming in from break, maybe I was just like hypoxic, I have no idea. And I'm coming in and I see Kegan there, and I'm like, this dude's like, you're wearing a wetsuit at the time, full suit. I'm like, this dude's shredded. He's walking around. Like, this guy's, is he part of, like, no, there's no way. He's like, he's not like these other guys. In my mind, this is what it's going through my head. Like, what is his story? You know, and then you're, not that I'm like sitting there just like watching you, but like, you take it off your wetsuit, and I looked over and you got all these scars on you, and I'm like going, okay, what is this? You know, and I was so intrigued, and that's the first time I ever met you. And I don't really remember meeting people for the first time often, but this was really like something that stuck with me, and you told me your story, and I'll never forget that. And then years later, years later, we're on the same boat going over to Catalina to do our channel crossing on Veterans Day with Open Water. And you had a bigger beard than you do now.
Yeah.
And I remember reintroducing myself to Kegan, and it wasn't like that long apart, and I should have recognized, but I didn't even recognize you until you said your name, and then we talked. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'd love to hear, because this is my favorite, is what was that like for you at that point in your recovery, I don't know where you were at that time, and coming over across that channel, meeting everybody on the shore, and then having to look and go, I got to go all the way back on a board for that was a rough year. I think I think that was the gnarly year that we had, which is probably the hardest.
We had brutal conditions for like 13 miles.
Cold. It was gnarly. And so, I would love to hear what that was like for you. What was that experience
class
like
of
for
22.
You? Yeah.
Oh man, that was a great experience for me. Like that was at a time, and I probably looked like a different person because I was a different person from when you first saw me in 2018 on the beaches up. I guess we did that in Huntington Beach.
Yeah. That was when we were doing Operation Surf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On our side there.
Yeah.
And I was a different person. That was in the heat of my struggles. I was going through a medical board at that point. I was starting to deal with the psychotic stuff. Like I was in a really rough place. And Operation Surf, that experience, it helped me get through that period because it gave me something to live for at a time when I was ready to put a Glock in my mouth a lot of those days. Wow. But then to fast forward to the open water crossing in 22, I'd had my heart opened again. I had felt alive. I'd grown this big red beard. I had my hair down to my shoulders. I was just like, I was just a wild man, like reconnected to
feral
nature, man.
Well, didn't you just come off that 112-mile mountain bike ride?
Yeah, I had just done the Margie Gessick, which is, for those that are unfamiliar, it's like the most brutal single-day mountain bike race on the planet. So I was in good shape. Like my fitness was awesome. I had been endurance training.
Quads were like 2 feet wide. I remember.
Pants. You had to wear stretchy pants just in order to wear pants.
Shorts,
dude. Shorts. Yeah.
I like jorts to just show
jorts.
them off.
Yeah. Totally.
Skies out, thighs out, you know.
Totally.
But I was feeling great for that. Like, because I had been so conditioned with that mountain bike training, it actually transferred over to paddling really, really well. And I felt really strong that whole paddle. I was like emotionally, spiritually, physically just loving every moment of that experience. And
that was a big like 5 months because you were just starting your training when we kicked off the run up to the crossing with the Waterman Retreat in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And you were actually using the Waterman Retreat as part of your training.
Yeah.
And then you went and you did the mountain bike race, and then it was like the crossing was your
recovery.
Was your recovery.
Yeah.
That was big.
Yeah, man. I love that, man. The crew that we had, and I'm the kind of guy when we're on something like that and the conditions get really rough. There's this madman part of me that's like, fuck yeah. I want it. Like, let's get the seas rolling. Like, to make it that much more experience. I want to be the guy who goes and does the crossing and is like, oh, that was the best conditions we ever had. Oh, it's so easy.
Yeah. And everybody's like looking at you like, what is wrong with this guy?
That's
crazy.
That was the first year that it became a 12-week program because in 21, Jake and I went up there with Brooke Thomas and we just kind of piloted a retreat with Jay Wild and Tahoe Waterman and Morgan Hostry. And we went up there for the week to get Jake and Brooke trained. And while we were up there, we were just like, oh my God, this is like the best training grounds in the world. With one of the most
altitude.
elite trainers and coaches and Jay Wild.
Oh, that guy's a beast.
Yeah. And so that crew that went up for class of 22 was just all time. We had 7 or 8 individuals from North Carolina.
Howling at the Moon.
Yep. Yeah. We had Seamus from Virginia Beach and you. And
guy.
Gosh, man, that was just such a good crew. And you guys were so, like, it was like that Waterman Retreat just, like, bonded you guys on a level. Like, even though you and Seamus were, not in North Carolina, you all were like this all the way through.
That was an outstanding group of human beings.
That was a big bonding moment because the conditions were tough and you guys had to rely on each other.
Yeah, it got gnarly.
It was.
Yeah.
It felt like we were going nowhere. I remember I had a good pace. I felt like I was going, and there was video of me early on going. I'm like, oh, I'm moving. You can see, like, oh yeah. And then there's video towards the end about the platforms right out there before the mussel farm out there. And I swear to God, my arms are moving the same speed as that video from like 2 hours out, but I was not moving that
Yeah.
at all. I'm like, what is happening? It was an incredible experience. So for me, because that was your first, experience doing that with open water and going across the channel, my first experience, I have a memory that sticks with me. And one of them, it was we had a rough time at a headwind, and for first couple hours, unexpected. It was cold, and it really debilitated a lot of us. It was really a mental check.
Oh, yeah.
And we had this pod of dolphins come out of nowhere, probably a couple hundred dolphins, and they came in and just swam with us, and probably going like, "Pick it up, dude. We're bored. Come on, so, you're not go fast enough." But I was like, I needed that. Oh my gosh, and I'll never forget that experience. It gives me chills just thinking about that connection. So, what was your connection? Your first, crossing, and was there something? It could have been during the crossing on the island, but is there something from that experience that you think of fondly or commonly pops up?
One of my best memories was we were like right in the middle of the crossing after we had all just been getting ragtagged by that gnarly water that was pushing us backwards and sideways and spiraling us like we were in a washing machine for a while. And we got through that about halfway through the channel cross. I think we stopped right at the halfway mark, and we had that little circle out on the water, and we just had a little talk of like why we were doing this and those that couldn't be there with us. And like right in the middle of the speech, I'm pretty sure I freaking flipped my boat and it was upside down. But that was just an amazing moment out there in the water with that group of people that were just all awesome human beings, all these freaking awesome watermen and our veteran first responder group, just all connecting out in the middle of the deep Pacific over one of the deepest points in the ocean with who knows what swimming down below us. And I just
below
felt
us. Yeah.
just like we're alive today.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
That's freaking cool. I love to hear that, Kegan. And you mentioned, we've got a book. Let's probably start wrapping it up. And we've got so your book, Phoenix Revival, right?
Yeah.
You wrote this. Tell us where people can get this book. Tell us where we can find you on social media, how they can connect with you. If you have people, that heard some of the stuff and want to reach out to you, maybe have questions, and want to learn more about your story.
Phoenix Revival. It's available on Amazon. It's probably the best place to get it. You can get paperback, hardcover, ebook, and I did the Audible for it as well. So whatever you're into, you can find your flavor on there. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at Kegan Smurf Gill. You can find me on LinkedIn under Kegan Gill. So I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. If you want to reach out, please do. I also do coaching. If you're somebody that's going through your own journey and you want some guidance on that, I would love to help you do that. That is something I'm passionate about, and I might give you a different perspective on all that than maybe things that you've tried in the past. If you're looking for a motivational speaker, over the past couple of years now, I've been traveling all over the place, speaking to everything from nonprofit organizations, mastermind retreats, corporate events, universities, high schools, you name it. I can really tailor a powerful speech to whatever you got going on. If you'd like, please hire me. Helps me and my family out big time.
Awesome.
And also, I'll be working with these guys at the Davis Focus Project. So check those guys out. I think this is the future of healthcare. Yeah. We're rebuilding the system the way it should be. And, it's going to be a fight maybe against some of the establishment, but it's with a bunch of other military aviators and that got a lot of the same interests that have been through these same struggles and seen how broken the system is. Yeah. And we got a solution that's better.
Good thing we have people like you that like a good fight and are willing to never
Sign
back down.
The experience.
Yeah.
So to close,
last words,
So to close this out, let's close this out on a quote. Close us out on a mantra, something that we can take with us.
One of my favorite quotes is from Carl Jung, and it goes, "In order to grow to reach the heavens, we must have roots deep into hell." So realize when you're going through these hard experiences in your life, it's allowing you to shape you and mold you and to grow into something bigger.
Wow.
At least
Love
that's
that,
my
bro.
interpretation of it.
Just gonna let that sit and marinate for a little bit. That's incredible.
All right. Well, we're
Kegan,
gonna end with that.
yeah, thank you so much for your time coming out on the
course.
Rusty Anchor Journey podcast with us, with me, Kane Johnson, and Danny Nichols. This has been a
This has been
experience
awesome.
that I can't put into words. You know,
Yeah, thank you.
what an
Thank you for
incredible
having
story.
me, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
Anytime.
yeah.
Yep.
We hope you all enjoyed it out there too, and until next time, give some people some high fives and
Stay
smiles,
stay
and
wild.
stay wild, stay rusty, and stay salty.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.